Welcome to Content Buddy. I'm here with my content buddy, Pablo Gonzalez. Woohoo!
LinkedIn Town, it's a digital village. Rita, why is your parody of Beauty and the Beast opening song about LinkedIn not the theme of this podcast? I'm a little upset.
You know, it's not because I got sick of hearing myself singing it after the third time I edited through it, but we could change that. We could change that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like you at all.
I know. I hear this being sick of the sound of my own voice. What's wrong with me?
Who are you? Who are you?
Who am I? I don't know. Well, thanks for coming on today to interview me, Pablo. For anyone listening who's wondering what's happening, Pablo is an amazing part of my journey. And he is part of the reason why the show is even called Content Buddy, actually. I don't know if you know this, Pablo.
I know this.
But every time you reach out to me or you talk to me, you're like, hey, buddy, how's it going? And, you use that really awesome term of endearment. And then I was like, you know what? We're kind of content buddies. I was like, wait, there's probably a lot of content buddies out there that I could talk to online. And there we go. And thus the name Content Buddy for the live stream was born. So thank you for your inspiration.
I am here for it. I love that. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that. Are we ready to ready to walk out, buddy?
Yeah, buddy.
Okay.
Take over. Let's go.
So Rita, I reached out to you because I want to do content with you because you're my content buddy.
Yes.
But more than anything, because I remember when you and I started working together. I mean, I remember meeting you. I met you, and then like about a year later, we started working together.
Yes.
You were coming off of a prior work experience, very into this like podcast production kind of role. Mm-hmm. I saw you as more of a content strategist. Then I saw you kind of figure out that you can do hard things, things well. And the whole time, what I have seen is you take your experience in podcasting, your podcast itself, and your personality as a podcaster, and just like eat up the food chain, right? Like I've been seeing you get speaking engagements. I have been seeing you land clients. I have been seeing you specifically everywhere in like the Jacksonville local scene, which makes me, game respect game, makes me think that you are doing something really effective on the networking front locally that most people sleep on when it comes to podcasting. Most people think of podcasting and they're thinking of this like audience building and they're thinking about LinkedIn and yada, 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 yada. Yeah. You are doing that. And I know that you want an audience because you're a star, but more than anything, this idea of like seeing you speak at all these different local stages, I need to understand why, like I wanted to just kind of like break down the genius behind that.
Okay.
And
talk through it.
Yeah, let's talk through it. So first of all, why don't you kind of tell me when you started realizing that this thing was good for local networking? How'd you start thinking through that?
Right. So actually, the first thing that came to mind is when I was trying to figure out how to maybe get more speaking gigs just in general and try to see what opportunities were out there. I was a little overwhelmed at the idea of the entire United States, and I wasn't really sure about what way to go about it. But I realized that, okay, maybe there's a few connections. If I start small and I start local, maybe there's a few steps that I can take to help get me on that path and slowly build myself there. And the first thing that came to mind was, the Jacksonville Podcast United community group here local in Jacksonville that Blythe and Botter very awesomely run. I was looking back and I was like, well, that's how I met Pablo. I met you at that event for the first time for real. And that's
not technically, literally.
Like literally, yeah. Like that's how we met. So I was like, okay, well, that was amazing. And that turned into an awesome business relationship that we have, and that I got to work with you and help be a part of Be the Stage as well. And then I realized, well, if it worked that time, maybe I can do it again. Maybe I can replicate whatever I I did the first time around. And I started thinking to myself, well, if I had some sort of value to provide to the local community, if I could give back in some way, maybe through educating or teaching podcasting, when I go to a networking event or something, I have something other than my business or just a podcast to talk about. And I started thinking about, okay, well, if for local Duvalers, what are important institutions that if you said you worked at a said institution, you might get some respect from, right? So first, okay, we have the Jaguars here, and I'm not a sports person, so I was not about to try to do any type of content or pitch anything with them. So after one talk with my boyfriend Kenny about trying to figure out how I was going to do that, it was very clear to me that I did not have the skills to try to do the sports side of town here. So I was like, okay, we're gonna put that and speaking at those types of whatever that away. Then I started thinking, okay, well, I did one little virtual talk at my local college that I went to, the community college here, Florida State college at Jacksonville, because we're not cool enough to just be Florida State. They have to make us feel small that we weren't going to FSU. I did one virtual talk a couple years ago, and I realized that universities really help with your personal brand. Like if you said that you've spoken at a certain university, other universities will endorse that. And then companies or conferences find value in that branding as well too. So if you said, okay, well, I've spoken at FSCJ, if I could get to be a speaker at UNF, that would be really cool. So I did the old school thing and I called UNF. I literally just called them and I was just like, hey, how are you doing? Is there a continuing education department or is there a community department? Like I want to do a free class. I just want to give back to the community and do like one free class. And that one conversation actually turned into a paid opportunity where I am now teaching two separate sets of master classes there actually,
What?
which is so cool. So I did a pilot class. We did one class where I got paid like not a lot for, but the only thing that they said was if you get 4 people to sign up, and people show interest in this class, then we will consider doing this as an ongoing masterclass for people in the local community. So you better believe I was like, I got to go out into my community then and market this class. So I started going on Eventbrite, probably like the app for networking. At the beginning of every week, I hop on Eventbrite and I type in business networking and I click the free box so I don't have to pay for the event. And I just started showing up to these networking events and filming little content snippets that I was at these networking events. It's almost like somebody that taught me how to do that over here.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And yeah, so I was inspired by like what I learned from you, and we talked about that before, Pablo. But as soon as the event ended, I, like you always talk about how important it is, I would post like that night or the next morning on LinkedIn and tag a bunch of people that were in that little video. And the video wasn't very difficult to make. It was just like 2-second shots here and there. And life hack, there's a app called Light Cut on that you can get for free on your phone, and it automatically stitches together 2-second videos and makes like a little 30-second reel like for you basically. So you don't really have to try that hard. But the intention is there. So what happens when that happens? Okay, well, you start talking about, oh, I'm teaching at UNF. And then at a local Jacksonville event, I get somebody that says, oh, I'm an alumni. I actually went to UNF or whatever. Like now a conversation is starting. And then it's kind of like, is this how sorority girls and frat boys feel? Because I feel like this is like, there's something here. Like there's like a club that I'm getting into in some way. I don't know. So it was like, okay, that we talk about that. And then I would ask them if they had kids and if they had like, and what they do for fun. And then a lot of them, because we are only a couple hours of Disney away from Disney in Orlando, be like, oh, we do this or that. And sometimes we go to Disney with our kids. And I'd be like, oh, well, I have a Disney podcast if you want to ever hear it. And then we'd get more down the line conversationally in that way. And then they'd love me because they'd be like, oh, it's the fun, like Disney happy girl, like who's here.
It's the local Disney princess.
Yes, it's fine. No,
Yeah.
but then what happened is, when I went to one event, it kind of trickled down into where another person said, "Well, hey, we actually have, I saw that you're very great at making these little clips or whatever, videos and posting them to LinkedIn. I like that you're not invasive about it. I like that you make the content and you're not like, hey, how are you? Like influencers in the wild or whatever." So then that person invited me to be attending a local tech event at UNF, which is like, cuz he saw it's like very wild. Once you find like one key thing in your local community that is of some type of name importance, other things quickly fall in line in between. So that event that I'm invited to be at, I'm going to just go. My ticket will be covered, but I will create content there and I will get to meet other vendors and other people there, which is an even better opportunity for me to be able to go to different vendors and do the same thing over again, basically. So I mean, it's led to me going to a country club party for free, which was really fun. I never thought I could just like slide into like the river club or whatever. Like that was really cool. I was just there and hanging out with people. But I learned that like within your local community, there are sub communities of these circles of people, and there's an inner circle somewhere, and you just have to find the right circle. So I'm like, okay, education is one little circle, like that's another one. Networking, I learned that there are certain types of events that you want to go to. I went to a few that were people looking for jobs or people that were just like
let's
new
let's
new to
let's
the
pause.
business.
Let's pause. Let's pause. Right.
Yes.
Let's
Yeah.
because let's dive
All right.
in.
Let's dive in.
Phew, that
Yeah.
was that was awesome. Right.
Yeah.
Like, man, I'm glad I sent you that text.
Yes.
All right. A couple things that I just want to recognize here,
Okay.
right? Of things that you have done.
Mhm.
The first thing that feels like you realized in this journey was this idea that when you're in a room and you are talking to people uh, from a standpoint of what you have to offer as like education, as let me promote you somewhere,
Mhm.
like showing up of service has been the through line here, right?
Yes.
Like it is the key, it's the absolute key to networking. And it's one of the big reasons why I tell podcasters all the time that just because you're not a famous podcaster doesn't mean that podcasting doesn't give you like an unfair advantage in building relationships,
Right.
right? And the podcast is one way. Most people have a hard time seeing beyond a you know showing up as to their audience, or
Mhm.
b I only have value if I offer you to come onto a podcast. But you
Right.
quickly realized that you have value in the fact that, you spend some time working inside one of the premier B2B podcasting companies. So you have
Mhm.
stuff to like that you learn from that angle. You're a podcaster yourself, which is another angle. And you also are talented when it comes to content creation and figuring out how to make like cool reels on your
Yeah.
phone, unlike a boomer like myself, right?
Yeah, I mean, not like that part, but those three facets are very important to call out, and I appreciate you saying that. Really, it's true. Like, I think people, when they think podcasting, they pigeonhole themselves into this is the only thing I need to do to be successful is to grow the audience, and if it's not growing, then I am not successful, and it's not worth my time. But really, it's we're so in line with this philosophy, which is wherever you can find your own platform or stage, where if you can create it for yourself, that's whatever way you can do that is
Mhm.
is the way to go. And for me, I think when people view you also as a multifaceted person, like you're not coming in and just being like, I'm here to sell people this, and people can feel that I'm trying to sell something, then we're not having actual conversations. I'm genuinely going to places to build relationships. And if I in one of those three categories, whether it's education, content creator, or UGC or whatever, that's kind of a platform that I'm trying to start building. Or, like anything else that falls into that line. If those are the things that they want, I want to be able to offer them something of value, of service. I'm not trying to show up and stuff something down somebody's throat that they don't want to talk about, basically. And what I found is that you have to also be in the right rooms for that too. So you
Let's
could,
talk. Let's talk about getting into the right rooms. I
yes,
want to break it up because I think I can
yeah,
break down how you've gotten into the right rooms.
okay,
Because that's kind of like where you ended. Like I do want to end on this, like what you have learned or of what are the right rooms. I
yeah,
just want to identify a couple other things.
yes,
Um, One big thing that you identified is the university brand
yeah,
is something that you can leverage as a sign of credibility to
mhm,
get you into other like brands and other people. Very similar to my journey, where what I realized is that nonprofit brands,
mhm,
I could do this, right? The same thing that you did with um,
UNF,
Florida State College of Jacksonville to
yeah,
UNF
yes,
is what I did in, I came in through Habitat for Humanity, created a young professionals group to then go to like Leadership Miami, get in a bunch of other charities and start leveraging those brands of, hey, I'm not showing up to pitch my business. I'm not showing up to like whatever. I'm here in service of a greater cause. That's a brand that's
mhm,
beloved. And that really works, whether it's the local university or the schools
mhm,
or charities or the Chamber of Commerce, right?
yes,
Like all that stuff really, really works. And it's about finding your wedge in. And it sounds like your wedge in was this like first virtual talk from where you graduated. How'd you get that first one, right? Because that to me is kind of like the key. How'd you get
yes.
the first one?
So the first one, basically what I did is I went on LinkedIn and I did some research to see who the director, or not the director, who a professor for marketing might be at the local college. And as somebody that went to that program and didn't learn much about content marketing within the business program that they had there, I thought that there may be an opportunity that they might want me to do some sort of talk to help their students or
Mhm.
something. So when I found a professor for marketing on LinkedIn, I just shot a DM and was like, "Hey, I don't know if you guys have any kind of like special projects coming up for your students, or if there's like a professional speaker day or whatever, I was thinking about when initially, like, if I was a kid, it was like, "Oh, bring your parent to school day." I'm like, "Well, they don't have that, and I'm not anybody's parent."
I
So,
know parent. I
and
know parent.
I'm not no parent. So I was like, if you guys have like a professional speaker day, like, or a career fair, like those were the words that I was using. Would
Mhm.
I be able to speak? Because I do remember when I went there, they had a career fair day at some point where different professionals would come
Mhm.
and talk about what
Mhm.
they do for a living. Long story short, she was just like, yeah, we are doing a like an incubation like business project right now, and
Mhm.
we totally would be interested in you doing like a Zoom session to talk about podcasting and how you used it to learn how to network, so we can help these college professionals and students learn
Mhm.
themselves how they can network once they graduate, basically. so
So
i
good.
was so I was like, yay, that's great.
Yeah.
Of course, that was the easier one because I said I was an alumni. So I said, I went to school
Yeah.
here. I want to give
Yeah.
back to the school that I went
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So I don't
Before,
think,
before
yeah,
we go on to the next one,
yes.
what I heard there is a age old rule in business that I can succinctly describe as it goes down in the DM, right? Like you reaching out and shooting your shot, right? Like find a wedge, find somebody in, whether it is your university, and again, you showed up of service. You didn't show up
Mhm.
like, hey, can somebody give me a mic? You said, do you have you tied to an initiative that they may have,
Yes.
and you said, do you have any kind of like career upskilling day? You used
Mhm.
you used LinkedIn the way that the good Lord intended us to use LinkedIn, right? Like you're
Yes.
like reaching out for somebody that could get you in, offer them a way to align together in something that they already want to do, and you showed up of service, right? Like
Yeah.
same thing can happen just like you did in the university. Again, my journey in the nonprofit world was do you have a young professional program? Like, do you guys have a young professionals
Mm,
group? Do you want
yeah.
to grow? You want to grow. Back then, it was like millennials were like the young people, and I'm like, do you want to grow engagement in the millennial community? I've
Yeah.
done this in these other ones, right? Or just answering to that, even if they don't have that, at least from the charity standpoint, I think the college standpoint of like, do you have like, hey, I want to teach this skill set to young people, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a successful young person. In the nonprofit world, it also looks like, are you putting on an event that I can join a committee for, or
Mm,
or like whatever, right? Like
yes.
that's really really easy. And then from there, I think where you're about to go is a concept that I would describe as, once you get one stage, you use the stage that you got to leverage it and eat up the daisy chain to other stages, right? So
Yes.
like, once you get that first thing in the door, you can use that as credibility, be it how, I want to learn how you did it. Actually, why don't I learn how you did it, and then I'll
Okay.
contextualize it otherwise. Yeah.
Well, then I started thinking about what are some industries in this city right now that are really doing well, that don't have a lot of content presence at, and that I also enjoy. And technology and tech, I just, I like it. I like the idea of it. It seems interesting to me, and we have a lot of cool companies that are growing within this niche here or whatever.
Mhm.
So I'm exploring my niches. I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. And I was like, let me see if on Meetup there is an organization for local, maybe young tech or meetup or something. What I found is there's actually a couple of local women in tech organizations in Jacksonville, which are really cool. I had no idea that they existed. I went to one with my friend. We I kind of dragged her to come with me, and I was like, kind of make it look like it wasn't just me. You know what I mean? Sometimes if you're in a
Mhm.
new place, if you're with somebody else and you kind of have a vibe about you,
It
that's
works.
also it works really well too. So,
Yeah.
anyways, went to this one women in tech meetup event. It was a very small round table kind of meetup chit chat. And we were all just getting to know each other, and everyone kind of discussed a topic of personal development that they learned for that week or whatever. So then I started talking about at the table how I was teaching podcasting at UNF. And then everyone was like, oh, that's cool. And a couple of the women had expressed that they were trying to learn how to network so that they can find their next career or their next position or whatever. Right. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, maybe you should try podcasting. I don't know.
I
I
love
don't
it.
know. And plus LinkedIn or whatever. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
So those conversations went nice. Well, they was well received.
Yeah.
And then the founder of the organization was there, and I asked her, I was like, hey, I noticed that your next meetup is actually a keynote speaker meetup, and you're doing it to be a resource to the group. Would you be interested in me doing that next one? She was like, yeah, we stink at content. We're great at engineering. I worked for NASA. We're great at
Mm,
coding, but we don't
mm,
understand social media.
mm.
And I was like, oh, that's actually really freaking cool. Yes, I would love to do that. So, um, the answer to your question is um, to amplify your networking, you have to be in the right room, but also meet somebody else who's equally as involved in the community. So,
Mhm.
since she has the initiative for women in tech, she
Mhm.
knows so many people that I don't know. She keeps a monthly
Mm.
list of the various
Mm.
women or tech events that she sends out to women in the group so that they can be notified. So now I left with a free piece of paper with every single event in the area possible, which is like free market research
Yep.
basically for you, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then from there, it just kind of it's now I'm going to this tech event and who
Yeah.
knows what else, right? So it's like it really is the being in the right place at the right time. But I had to really reel it in even further. There was another random event that I went to, and it was just a business one. I started talking to one guy there, and he's really awesome, and we started talking about how he's the director of IT somewhere locally in Jacksonville, and his wife is an IT too. And guess what, they're a huge fan of Disney. They're like a little Disney couple. They go all the time. And I started talking more to him, and I found out that that event that I had heard about, the tech event, he's part one of his company's one of the sponsors for the
Yeah.
event. Like they're
Echo
running it.
Compass?
Yeah, yeah. So Tech Coast Conference, here we go. Now I have my in, and
Yeah.
he actually very kindly sponsored 2 student spots for the UNF class so that it would be successful too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just really cool to see how when you just do the old, the gold
Mhm.
is in the DMs or whatever, and
Yeah.
just try to put yourself out there, what can happen.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think you did more than you. Yes, you put yourself out there to see what could happen. I want to break down a couple of concepts, but you're not just talking about putting yourself out there and seeing what's happened, right? Like being in the right place at the right time
Mm,
usually happens more often if you have a strategy around increasing the surface area of luck. Right,
mm,
like, and this what you are doing is like you created a real strategy to not just network but amplify your networking through content,
mhm,
and again the strategy continues to feed itself, right? So a couple of things that I see that happen when you do this and you do this well, that's reflected in your story, is one, I would say three things. One, you realize what your value in every room is, um, as it evolves. Like in
mhm.
one room, you're a podcaster, right? Like,
Right.
and that is you realize, oh, that's different. In another room, you're like a Disney enthusiast, and you're like,
Yes.
oh, that's valuable.
Yes.
And people tend to underestimate how how much value they have to offer, and also that value usually comes from what makes you different inside of the room. You
Mhm,
being the one content marketer inside a woman in tech made
mhm.
you immediately special in that room, special enough to be a keynote speaker. And I
Yeah.
think that gets lost, right? Like a lot of people will be
Yeah.
like, like you go to Jack's Podcaster United and
Yeah.
you're one of 25 podcasters. You also
Yeah.
have a specific set of experience and you've done
Right.
stuff, right? But like in woman in tech, immediately you rise to the top because you're the
Right.
one that's different.
Right.
So that's a super important thing to realize is like look for the rooms where it's interesting to you and you're different. Don't have the imposter syndrome that like, well, I'm not an engineer, so why would I go to
Mhm.
women in tech, right? So
Right.
I thought that was cool. The other thing that works really well is not just the ability to iterate on what your value is, but the ability to like introduce yourself with a different identity. You went from I'm
Mhm.
a podcaster to oh I'm a speaker to
Yes.
oh I'm an adjunct professor, right?
Yes.
Like that that
Yeah.
that really works, right? Like
Yes.
don't be slow to adopt the identity of your last opportunity, and
Mm.
that means that your next opportunity will have an equal step up as the opportunity before the last one. Um,
Right.
I think it's really really interesting.
I
Um,
love how you broke that down because I think when you think, "Oh, I'm just a podcaster," you limit yourself to, "I'm just a podcaster,"
yeah,
but it's just a tool for networking and relationship building, and the more that you realize that it is what you are saying and one step, up that you can take, like speaking or educating or whatever it is, and match that to the room that you're in, it really does amplify the opportunities. And you're right, I am looking at different rooms and thinking, "Okay, well, what differentiates me in this environment? How can I speak and connect with somebody in a way that's going to be memorable and stand out and maybe of service or value to that individual?"
yeah, yeah. Like you can, like now with this new viewpoint, you can look at an event that's like medical sales reps and be like, yeah, I belong at that event. Cause you know
Yes.
what? I'm the only person that's going to walk in there and be like, yo, as a medical sales rep, have you ever thought about having a podcast about doctors?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's
Yes.
it's a big deal. And by the way, I teach it. And if you want to learn it, come to my adjunct professor class.
Magic I love that you call it that because I was trying to figure out how to phrase it. I feel like that sounds way more impressive than instructor or
Right?
educator.
Yeah, yeah.
Adjunct professor.
Yeah. I'm gonna call you adjunct professor podcast.
I like
Um,
that.
and then the last thing is there is moments in this when you are just kind of like throwing it against the wall and you hit a juncture that opens up multiple junctures in different ways. One is technology,
Yes.
right? Like going to Eventbrite to look for the stuff, going to a meetup to look for the stuff, right?
Mhm.
There is watering holes of opportunities in technology,
Right.
and then there's watering holes of opportunities in people.
Mhm.
Once you get into the event, like meeting the one person who's the super connector inside the event makes a really really big difference because you're going to find people that really give a crap about what is everything that's happening in Jacksonville all the time that you now have access to and you're one intro away, right? So that like how to find that joint that hits one to many, is a really big thing. And for that reason, even if you're not walking in as the speaker, but getting there super early so that you get one-on-one time with the organizer, who's the only person that's there 20 minutes early, is
Mhm.
huge because the organizer is generally a super connector. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think that's extremely valuable. And I do want to highlight even further what you said to end, which is a lot of this is what I learned from Pablo. And he has a theory that's called, I literally I repeat it to myself all the time: one to few, one to many. I just like repeat it all the time. If I'm
Mhm.
having a hard time trying to figure out how to market my business or something is slow, that's how I start. It starts with that first step, that first connection, with a little bit of planning in advance too. So I mean, that I can't take credit for that. That was all you.
I mean, that's just language from like ABM methodologies, but it works for networking as well.
Right.
Last thing, since I know we want to wrap up in a half an hour, the last thing
Yes.
that I just think is really, really underestimated is this idea of you don't even need to have a podcast to get in
Mhm.
a conversation with someone, whip out your phone and say, that was really smart. Let's record that real quick. I'm going to
Yes.
post it on LinkedIn, and then post it on LinkedIn and tag them. That was my founding insight in like 2019
Mm.
of doing that. And I think that because of COVID, we all forgot
We all
that,
forgot about it. We forgot
yeah,
about it.
that you can literally do selfie videos with the people that you're networking with, post them on LinkedIn, tag it, write about them. Now that person sees you as somebody that's like a partner in what you do and they
Yes.
do, and all of their friends see you, and it just adds to this flywheel for you to invite them into the cool stuff that you're doing. Phenomenal,
I
Frida.
I listen. Sometimes it's simpler than you think, basically. And if you don't have a podcast, that is the easiest way to do it. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, those posts perform pretty darn well compared to my other posts on
Yeah,
LinkedIn
yeah,
too.
that's what I noticed
So,
too.
yeah, they're like popping up. I'm like, who knew that a chicken at a bar would just like, cluck cluck bingo or whatever it was called at a gala bar, who knows,
Yeah.
would just like be the highlight star of my reel or whatever.
People aren't used, people like, we're still coming back from COVID, and like, it's
Yes.
weird to say it, but we're still not used to seeing people, like, we're so used to seeing this kind of content of
Right.
like two people across the screen. We're
Yes.
not being used to people sitting next to each other and like talking at like an event, and it just like
Yes.
stands out like, oh, I forgot there's a real world out there, you know.
Literally, that's
Yeah,
exactly how I felt, and that's
yeah.
also what I needed to do in order to get myself out of my own shell and see what was out there. And there's a lot of value in your local community. There's a lot of
Mhm.
value in doing the work and finding those connections that are in your own backyard. That, yes, I appreciate you for highlighting, because we can get really stuck about, oh, I'm not getting enough leads, or I'm not getting a speaking gig. And there might be one literally UNF is across the street for me. Like there might be one just down the street if you
Yeah,
just call.
yeah, yeah. Buddy, I'm so proud to see what you're doing. Like, I'm
Oh.
so like, I'm I'm not surprised because I saw this coming, and I'm
Oh.
just like proud of myself for getting into your path early on, so that now you tell people that I was part of your journey,
You
because
are.
you're super going places, and like, it's really, really, it's a real big joy to see your growth
Mm.
up close and from far away, and to see
Yes.
you continue to do what you're doing. I can't wait to like know you in 10 years and like see what you're up to, man. It's awesome.
Well, if we're doing it right, we're at a yacht party. That's where we'll
That's
be
what I
at.
was about to say. Yeah, I forgot to bring up the yacht party. That's what we were trying to parlay up to, the yacht party. Yeah,
The
I would
yacht.
say I would bet under on the 10 years of whether we're on a yacht party together.
All right, I'm still waiting,
Let's
Pablo.
go. Yeah, under 10 years. Under 10 years is all I'm saying. I'm only like 2 in.
Sounds awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pablo, for hanging out with me, and being my content buddy today. If anyone wants to learn about Pablo, his information will be linked below. And also, I mean, Pablo Gonzalez be the stage. It's not hard to find. He's all over LinkedIn as well too. So I really appreciated hanging out with you today, and I thank you so much. This was really fun.
Was a pleasure, my lady.
Thank you, thank you. I had to bow. Oh my God, we're such nerds. Okay, okay, all right, bye.